right, good to see everyone today. Hope you guys have had a good week and getting ready for the weekend. So I'm really excited about today's topic in particular because I've struggled with it a lot personally, and I feel like I have learned a lot through my own struggles and my own counseling to figure out how to make changes happen. How do we shift habits so that they're actually successfully shifted? So everyone has habits that we want to change. Being late, tapping your feet, drinking alcohol, overeating, eating too many sugars, junk food, going to bed late, drinking coffee, wanting to exercise, wanting to incorporate meditation. We all know generally what are good habits, what are bad habits, and pretty much everyone has the desire to change them and live a healthier, happier life. But when it comes down to the grind of actually changing them, it can feel like opening up Pandora's box, and specifically to the subconscious, and the subconscious blocking our ability to actually make the shift. So in order to successfully change a habit, you really have to understand the psychology behind the habit. You likely don't know why you're doing it in the onset, or what is preventing you from starting that new habit until you make yourself vulnerable to taking a peek inside and vulnerable to digging deep. So the key to unlocking the bad habits, or not even just bad habits, we'll just say changing habits. I don't like using the word bad habits, changing habits, is to understand the origin of the habit, the why behind the habit. So what I mean about Pandora's box. So when you start to think about the routines, thought patterns, habits that you are wanting to adjust, it feels like it's opening Pandora's box to deep buried emotions and thought patterns. The events in your life, how you were raised, belief patterns from your childhood and family dynamics all influence your thought patterns and beliefs. And so we find that these thought patterns and beliefs are what they can block us from making these healthy changes that we want to make. We can have the best intentions to go walking and move 30 minutes a day. We can have the best intentions to want to eat better, the best intentions to do mindfulness. But until we address these deeper roots, the deeper why, we can be struggling with actually making these changes. And it can be really hard to want to face the why behind it. It can be challenging to be open and vulnerable to ourselves, to what comes up. But the cool thing is that if you are able to open up to yourself, then that allows you to work through it, to heal, forgive, just generally come out stronger because you understand your body, you're more self-aware. And so you feel stronger in your own skin. So let's talk about some examples of some of the underlying belief patterns, thought patterns that affect our decisions throughout the day. Do you find that you unconsciously thwart your own success because you don't feel like you deserve to do well in life? Do you feel like you need to please others? What type of rewards or reinforcements does your body and brain like when you're under stress? Is it sugar? Is it TV? What type of things did your family use in your childhood when there was a stressful event? And so you either shut down with TV or you reached for another coping item, or how are you rewarded for positive events, for doing well in school? How are habits reinforced? So I'm gonna tell you about my experience, because I'm hoping that if I share this, then that will help you understand what it looks like to go through this process deeply and what it takes to be open and vulnerable with yourself. So it's taken me 2 years of weekly counseling to finally be comfortable putting myself first and being able to create a habit of morning rituals, Pilates, but also being okay biking during the week, not just saving it for the weekend. I've always put everyone else ahead of me, family, patients, work, kids, absolutely, and everyone. And it wasn't until I got 100% run down a couple years ago, right after my second kid was born, that I was literally forced to change my mindset. And more often than not, people won't change big habits like this until you're kind of put in a situation that forces you to do it. And so I had to learn how to put up healthy boundaries. I think boundaries can be incredibly healthy, but boundaries, it was really uncomfortable, but it allowed me to start to carve out that self-time. So kind of some background. I grew up in a very strict but loving home. My dad was a World Cup ski racer, then became a manager for a large corporation. My mom is first generation American. So both parents were extremely driven and successful in their different realms. Growing up, it was about to do whatever you want to do in life, but do it 200%. So I seem to have embodied that concept from both my parents at a detriment to my health, because and I still tend to run 200, 300% all the time, but it was a process of learning how to, okay, put a pause on that, take a breather. But in order to learn how to change this habit, and learn how to actually put myself first so I could actually go biking, I had to work through the underlying psychology of the drive and immigrant assimilation mentality that constantly wants to please others. And the first time, so I had to work through that. And then when I finally was able to say no and to put up a boundary between work and saying, okay, I'm done with patients at 5 o'clock, and then I'm going to go run and work through the guilt of not picking up my kids at 5 o'clock and picking them up at 5:30 and working through all those deep emotions. That is when I finally actually got to be able to say no, put up those boundaries, and create and carve out self-care for myself. Now, not all habits are going to be that challenging to change. It just kind of depends on how deep and ingrained the mindset, the thought patterns are throughout our life. My thought pattern was ingrained from the beginning because there was a lot of subconscious coming in from my mother in particular. So I had to go through and work through all of the indirect actions of my childhood, be able to say, nope, there's my boundary. And it's interesting how all of that, and through your brain and through the next generation, kind of gets warped into different issues. But the good news of all of this is that it's working through this is a chance to become more self-aware. So it can be really challenging. And my big message is, don't get discouraged. If you feel like you have a lot to work through, just kind of keep chipping away at it. In the end, you come out so much stronger. So let's talk about how to make this a reality. How do you incorporate this and start opening up that book? So when it comes to changing a habit, only pick one. Only pick one that you want to change. Don't overwhelm yourself. So for example, and also be really specific. So for example, if you want to say, I want to start exercising, instead of saying, I want exercise, I want to be fit, get specific. You say, I'm going to do Pilates each day at 5:15 in the morning. And then you say where you're going to do it, what clothing you're going to wear, make it specific. The more you can make the new change in your life automated, the easier it is going to be to implement. So, and when I say automated, if you can pre-think of everything that you need to decide ahead of time, then you've already made the decisions. So for example, okay, you're gonna wake up at 5:15 every morning and you're gonna go walking for 30 minutes. So you are going to pre-pick out the clothing you're going to wear, and you're gonna fold it and put it next to your bedside table. You're going to pre-pick out where you're going to walk around the neighborhood, what direction you're going to take. You're going to pre-pick out, are you gonna take a certain water bottle with you? You can fill it up ahead of time. Literally, the less decisions you have to make in the moment will allow you to actually change that habit. Automation is huge, is key. If you're doing a new Pilates session, you need to figure out Where is your yoga mat going to go? Is it in your living room? Where in your living room? Pre-pick out the session, what specific Pilates session, what specific yoga session. Lay your mat out the night before, lay your clothing out the night before, and then all you do is you get up and you do it. No thought process needed when it actually comes time to implement that habit. You also want to make the goal reasonable. So instead of saying, all right, we're doing walking every day for a month. If that's not reasonable, start with 3 days a week and increase from there. Or if it's easier to have a all in or nothing mentality, which for me, that's my personality, it's all or nothing, then go for 7 days, and then you can commit to 7 days, and then you can always reevaluate how you feel after that 1 week. Reflecting on how you feel is really key, because that's the second part to this psychology of changing a habit, is that after you've tried out something for the first time, see how it makes you feel physically, mentally, emotionally. Are you more centered, more grounded, more calm? Are you proud of yourself? Were there challenges? Was it really, did you feel like uncertain and unsecure? You'd be surprised at how just implementing an exercise routine or a dietary shift can actually bring in the whole concept of insecurity. Again, it kind of all goes back to what happened in your prior years of your life to generate these key emotions and thought processes for you. So you want to start working through these emotions come up. If you have positive emotions, you want to cement those in. So writing is a great way to kind of cement in your positive emotions. Calendar, journal. I use my calendar because it works for me. Type it into your phone if that works, or just if you're good on your recall, taking a mental snapshot of how you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because the more readily you can recall these positive emotions linked to this new habit, the more successful you're going to be at integrating this new habit or integrating this change in your life. Your brain needs that positive feedback in order to turn this habit into a reality. So much like sport coaching, so I've done a lot of highly competitive sports, pole vaulting, ski racing, and with all of those, we are super analyzing everything: the speed of the run to the mat, the position in the air, the carve of the ski, everything is analyzed. And you actually kind of want to do the same thing with your habit, where you want to analyze your emotions and how you feel so that you can recall these positive emotions. Because if you don't have positive emotions available and ready for the recall and the grab, it's going to be very hard to integrate any change into your diet, life, exercise, routine, any of that. Another aspect is you want to believe in yourself. Believe that you can make the change. You can change your habit. You have the power in it. And if you don't believe in yourself yet, just stand in front of the mirror and say to yourself, I believe I can create XXX habits. So I can wake up at 5 a.m. and do Pilates 3 days a week. It may feel like you're lying at first, but over time you actually start to reframe your thoughts and then you start to believe it. So you can lie to your brain, and then over time it turns into reality. Another aspect to doing launching your changes, your habits, is visualizing. So before you kind of sit back here, before you actually make the first change, or before you actually go and do your 30-minute walk for the first time, visualize yourself doing it. How are you physically going to feel? What sounds are you going to hear? What smells are going to be present? Visually paint that picture for yourself, and and put yourself in that situation, because then when it comes time to do it the first time, you're going to be ready for it. You know what the experience is going to be like. Your brain will know, okay, there's going to be positive things coming out of it. The brain needs a lot of positive feedback. It needs a lot of hugs and love, basically. Long story short, brain needs loves and hugs. So, all right, so you've gone through your visualization, you've gotten really detailed and specific to the point where you're basically automating this new habit. Then once you've started your first session with this habit, you're reflecting on how do you feel mentally, emotionally, physically, everything, spiritually, you name it, reflect on it. And then as you start doing it, you want to also measure your progress, give yourself kudos for actually stepping up and doing it. And I know it can be challenging where if there's a slip up, you say, oh, screw it, it didn't work. That didn't work, I'll have to move on, try something different. But it's hard not to get disappointed by slip ups, but just be easy on yourself and know that there's always going to be slip ups. Life is so much more dynamic than an algorithm. And so there's always going to be slip ups. There's always going to be new pressures on the day-to-day routine. So taking a longer vision, a longer perspective, and then rewarding your process can help by not getting disappointed by those slip-ups. So I probably went through that really fast. I was excited about it. Let me open that up to questions, concerns. You can basically take this principle and apply it to anything, whether it's cutting back on alcohol consumption, whether it is getting to bed at a consistent bedtime, whether it's integrating a deep breathing exercise. Just focus on one, because if you focus on too many, then nothing happens. And it's about giving positive reinforcement back to the brain, which is, I find interesting about the whole idea of positive reinforcement, because zoos, a good zoo, uses positive reinforcement for the animals. So the animals only, they're never hurt or chastised for a negative response. They just get the carrot, they get the food when they do a habit correctly. So it's basically going back to the same principle we're talking about here. You kind of reward your brain for making those positive steps, but taking it even a step further of remembering how that habit made you feel, so then you want to go back and do that habit again. When it comes to breaking, let's open up alcohol. Sometimes you have to replace the action with something else as a step, or take alcohol and coffee. Both of those can be kind of similar in this aspect, where you need to replace literally holding something in your hands. So sometimes you have to literally replace a physical aspect to help the habit actually work. So, if you're replacing coffee with tea, if you're replacing alcohol with a flavored mineral water, or a Pellegrino, or a nighttime tea. So if you're trying to stop a habit that is not benefiting your life, not benefiting your health, finding a way to replace it with something different is actually a huge trick to be able to change that, because then your brain isn't just ultra laser focused on, oh, I can't have that coffee, I can't have that alcohol. You've replaced it. You kind of filled that void to some extent. You'll still have to work through the psychology of why you wanted the coffee, why you wanted the alcohol, and be willing to work through the Pandora's box that opens when you ask the why question. But there's always a why for our habits. Even the simple habits that you think aren't that big of a deal, there's a why behind it. And it's fascinating to go on to understand the why, because everyone's why is going to be totally different. And it's interesting as well, because when you start talking about habits, that you'll start to sometimes see that, okay, certain sight, sound, smells actually trigger the drive to want to do a habit. So it's not, your body is an integrated dynamic system where you can't just say, just the brain, just the brain. It's also, your brain is also getting feedback, a neurological stimulation and feedback from sight, smell, the physical body. So that's why when it comes to changing a habit and understanding the why, it's yes, going back to reshaping our thought patterns and beliefs, and you can't reshape them until you understand them. But if you ever feel like you get re-triggered, or you struggle, or you have a slip up, that's actually usually a really interesting point to go back and be like, okay, well, why did this slip me up? Was it a sight, sound, smell thing that actually re-triggered something? Was it a physiological thing? Like, was it a stress response? Most commonly, like, stress is kind of the easy one to go to, because that's the one that's going to trigger the most amount of slip ups for most people. Because that goes back to, okay, well, what coping skills did I learn? What coping skills did my family present me with? How did I cope in childhood, in my teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, etc.? Because your history and your family's history will affect your thought patterns. And so to actively change a habit, we have to repattern the brain and start to reframe how our physical body reacts to stressors, how our physical body reacts to triggers. And you may not know what your triggers are until you actually are just observant of this. And so if you feel like, wow, I have no idea what my triggers are, just start watching them. Just start writing down in a journal. Okay, so let's say you really wanted to go walk at 3:00 today, but you couldn't say no to work. You couldn't put work down for 30 minutes. Couldn't say no to your family. Why? Why couldn't you do that? Is it you didn't want to disappoint people? And is it that you were just excited and didn't want to put work down? But keep asking the question, why? And you have to go deeper than the first why. You have to go 10, 20 whys deep to figure out the real answer to that question. But just being open to that process is going to allow you to start working through your 20 whys. And kind of to be constantly open to it. I'm still shocked at how many why blockades I come across. Even still, now that I'm actually able to integrate self-care and not feel, I feel like 20% guilty about it. I'm still not at 0% yet. He's got more whys to work through. But I'm actually doing it, which is huge. But I'm always still surprised at how many whys still come up for me. And so, yes, it is kind of a never-ending process, but you'll personally be more self-aware, and then that will translate to your whole family, your significant other, your kids, because then you become a role model of how to be self-aware, how to be okay with discussing emotions, how to improve your relationships with others, but also improve your relationship with yourself. And I like to think about, from my experience of changing the trajectory of the woman in my family, changing it to more positive female space, more positive, self-aware, self-belief space, because that's not been there on the female side of my family. So being more self-aware allows you to grow, to be stronger, And then it just kind of diffuses out, right? It will just start to, all this positivity and being self-aware will diffuse out to those around you. So, all right, that was a fun ramble. I'm gonna take some tea. Cheers. I have, I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna keep rambling. I have seen something very interesting with our kids. More specifically, my daughter, she's 6, just finished first grade, going into second grade. She's always struggled with some anxiety, and I guess really with both kids, but I found it fascinating that even just the actions that me and my husband take on ourselves personally end up reflecting into her life in terms of how she's able to handle new situations. Yes, we're teaching her how to meditate and do deep breathing so that she can kind of calm her anxiety down in the moment. But if we are not in a calm place, then when we interact with her, she totally feeds off of us and then goes to whatever level that we are at. And that kind of links back with changing habits, because it took me a while to be able to do this. And one of the ways that helps me release the guilt out of my habits is that knowing that by creating self-care habits for myself, I'm more present with my daughter. I'm less anxious. I can come down my level onto hers without ramping her up. Do I still ramp her up? Sure. Do I still stir the pot and not want to? Yes. But more aware of it. And I think I'm doing it less often than before. But so it's interesting to see just the domino effect of how changing one habit actually has a domino effect to other people in your life. Let's see. Well, let me see what other rambles I can come up with. It's just kind of fun. So the current habit that I'm instituting is wake up at 5 a.m., which isn't as hard because my husband's on the computer at 5:30 working, and I'm not up. Everyone in work is, in his video is looking at me sleeping. Is about getting up at 5 a.m. and then instead of going back to sleep on the couch, getting up and exercise. That has been, I'm on day 5, and I had made the initial commitment to 7 days. And I can tell that my mindset now after day 5 from day 1 is hugely different. I feel like, day 1 was a struggle to get up and get on the mat and get out on the back patio, working out at 5:15, but now at day 5, so much easier because I know the experience. I know what that experience brings to me. I know the experience of watching the sun come up over Pikes Peak because I'm working out. I know the experience of hearing the birds chirping. I know the experience of smelling spring. I know the experience of feeling the physical tension release from me. So it goes back to the paint that picture of how you're going to feel. And that is what keeps me getting up at 5:15 in the morning, 5:15 to exercise and not just go lay back down on the couch, is the experience of knowing all of that I'm going to experience if I get my butt outside on the patio working out. And so that, where it goes back, huge key is going back to that visualization. What does it make you feel? How does it paint that positive experience in your brain. And then also over time, I've noticed that my brain latches onto more of the positive things just over the last 5 days. The first day it was like, oh God, I'm so tired, I don't want to do this. Second day I was feeling great. Third day, oh gosh, I'm so tired, I didn't want to do this. But fourth and fifth, it's been it's been easier to go grab onto that positive of, oh, I want to jump out of bed and I want to go watch that sunrise. I want to go listen to those birds chirp before the world wakes up. And what gets me back out every day is that visualization, all of those positive mental, emotional, spiritual things that you take away from that new habit. I don't go out there for the exercise. I go out there for those positive things that I take away. I'm thirsty. On the aspect of belief, that is another bigger one. My new goal, which I want to do within the next 4 to 6 weeks, is to go bike to the Pikes Peak. So one of the Colorado 14ers, the road all the way up to the top. I want to cycle it. In the back of my head, I have the chitter chatter of can't physically do it. I'm not going to do well with the altitude. And granted, I already live at 9,000 feet of elevation, so that's another 5,000 feet of gain. But visually, I can already see my brain kind of blocking me. I know the certain elevation points of pikes, and right at the end is just this zigzag up. But I have to find, this kind of goes back to cognitive behavioral therapy, where you have to just stop that thought in the middle of it and say, no, I believe I can do it. I believe I can get to the top of Pikes Peak. I know I'm a strong cyclist. I know I'm a strong biker. I can do it. And even if I feel like it's a lie at the moment, I'm still telling myself it, because then I'll believe it. And the more I tell myself it, the more I'm starting to believe, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can go bike to the top of Pikes Peak. I can be one of the few cyclists that does it from the bottom all the way up to the top. And belief and mindset is huge. So, it's easier for me just to get up at 5 a.m. and go out on the patio, do my morning exercise thing. Harder to go get on a bike and say, all right, I'm going to go cycle up to the top of Pikes Peak. I did it last year. I tried and I got halfway. Granted, turned around because there's a lightning thunderstorm happening. But it was probably some of the hardest cycling I had done, and I was only halfway. So sometimes you have to work against those belief patterns, and telling yourself, no, I can do this. I can do this. I'm strong. I'm already acclimated to 9,000 feet of altitude of living here for 2 years. It's give yourself, show yourself examples of why your belief is accurate. And this is another way to tell your brain, hey, look, no, there's a reason why this belief is accurate, why you can believe that you can go cycle the tops of Pikes Peak, because one, we've been dragging kids on trail bikes for the last year at 9,000 feet of elevation. Two, we've been acclimating to living at 9,000 feet for the last 2 years. So if you can go through, and if you find you really kind of run up against that self-limiting belief factor, prove your brain wrong and make a list of all of the reasons why not believing in yourself is an inaccurate thought. Why, prove to your brain why you can do it. Write it down. Writing is a very powerful tool for your brain. I think there's some neurological connection between the actual process of writing with your hand that goes up to your brain, but also seeing it on paper is really effective too. It's much more powerful that way. And so write down why your belief, why believing that you can do something is accurate. All right. think that's about all I have. It was one of my favorite topics, because until we are really willing and ready to be open to the process of changing habits, we're stuck in all of our old habits. We're stuck in all of our old routines. And then it becomes really hard to do the actions that we need to do to improve our life, improve our health, improve our happiness. And so this is actually probably one of the most important things. Well, not, yeah, it's huge. And being able to be open to Pandora's box that changing habits brings allows you to actually implement all the changes in your life that you want to see, whether it's from health to work, to family, to community, to church, whatever new routine, new habit you want to create. There's always a reason why you're doing the old habit. Be open to cracking that nut open, seeing what the nut looks like on the inside, crack that, and then break that nut open, see what the nut looks like in the core, and just kind of keep working deeper and deeper and deeper. And then you'll believe that you can back to the tops of Pikes Peak. So, all right. Well, it was a pleasure to meet everyone. I hope that gives you some motivation to chew on and to think about that. It's a heavy topic, but a big, important one. So I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I'll hang out here unless there's any other questions that pop through, but all right, I'll let you guys mentally chew through all that. All right, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Bye.